Hello, and welcome to the Pathfinders Winter Institute 2021. My name is Kate Maloney, and I'm the Executive Director of the Infosys Foundation USA. Our foundation exists to support you, our K-12 teachers who are working across the country to bring digital skills to the next generation. I'm proud to say that this is our second Pathfinders Winter Institute, and it's our fifth overall institute since the foundation started the program in 2018. To the 115 of you who are back for the second, third, fourth, and even fifth time, we want to extend an even warmer welcome and thank you for being true blue and orange Pathfinders alumni. It's hard to believe that 1 year ago we were in person in Providence, Rhode Island, wearing these nifty blue and orange woolen hats and sipping Dunkin' Donuts coffee. We had no idea what was ahead. But despite the challenges, twists, and turns, you all have survived and thrived. And you're here on a holiday weekend, investing in your own professional development and in the students you teach. We hope over the next 3 days that we can encourage your passion for teaching, your openness to making new connections with your teacher peers, and that you have the courage to embrace new discoveries in computer science and making. Now to the people who make this event possible. This is the Infosys Foundation USA team. Amrita, Becky, Justine, and Steph have all been working to virtually welcome you tonight, and they will be here all weekend to support you. And I'm going to ask that we pause on this slide and you all take a very close look with a wink, putting to use your best facial recognition skills because throughout the weekend, you may need to remember these faces. Our PD providers. They've heard me say this once or twice, but it bears repeating. We would not have a Pathfinders Institute were it not for you. Some of you have been with us since the very beginning, and some are new to the Pathfinders family for this event. But I want to thank all of you for the work and effort you put in preparing for our teachers this weekend, and for working so collaboratively with the Pathfinders events team. I think you'll all by now agree with me that in Brittany, we had expert hands to get us to this moment. Thank you, Brittany, for that. Most importantly, is all of you, the class of the Pathfinders Winter Institute 2021. I'm pleased to say there are 278 of you who have joined us for this experience over the weekend, 205 of which are coming from Title I schools across the country. There are 175 of you who are completely new to computer science. That means you overcame your fear, rolled up your sleeves, and you leaned in, and I'm telling you, by Monday, you'll be amazed at the confidence you have. 103 of you are non-computer science teachers, and we love this number because we think most likely you're out there teaching at an elementary school level, inspiring those young minds to all the possibilities that exist. 134 of you were able to create project pages on Donors Choose to fundraise. And I want to take a brief moment to recognize Donors Choose. They too have been here since day one. They're one of our strongest partners, and I hope beyond Pathfinders that we can continue to work together in support of you, our K-12 teachers. Now, this is probably not as amazing because we are virtual, but there is representation from 46 states among your class. I always like to give a little bit of a nod to those states who send the biggest delegations, and we have great representation from California, from New York, and from Texas. And lastly, the figure I love the most is thinking about all of the students who will benefit from the investment you're making this weekend. And we estimate that to be about 37,000. So let's get on with the program. Those of you who have young children may be familiar with an award-winning CBS Saturday morning new television program called Mission Unstoppable. This is a program that is completely dedicated to inspiring girls to pursue all possibilities in STEM. Our foundation started a partnership with Mission Unstoppable this past year, and in the spring, one of our very own Pathfinders alumni will be showcased in one of the episodes. So we encourage you all to watch and see. But tonight, someone special from the program, Fig O'Reilly, has some remarks that she would like to share. Fig is a former Miss Universe Ireland, but she's also an engineer and a NASA data-naut. So the very fact that I just used all of those titles in the same sentence says that stereotypes are meant to be broken. She has some inspirational tips and messages that I hope you then bring back to your own students in your classrooms. Let's turn it over to Fig.
This is what a scientist looks like. Anyone can be a scientist.
This is Steph.
Hey, I'm Miranda Cosgrove.
It's here. Let's see what Miranda sent us.
And your mind is about to be blown.
Woo! That's it.
That is so cool.
Join me, Miranda Cosgrove, as we celebrate women who are changing the world through STEM. Only on Mission Unstoppable, part of the Dream Team.
Pretty cool.
Weekends on CBS.
Hi everyone, my name is Fanula O'Reilly and I'm a correspondent on CBS's Mission Unstoppable. I'm a NASA data-naut and a former Miss Universe Ireland. I'm passionate about space, science, and technology, and I am very lucky that I get to work at the intersection of some really cool industries. As a science communicator for Mission Unstoppable, I get to travel all over the country to meet with inspiring women who work in science, technology, engineering, and math, or STEM. We go on very cool adventures, we create fun projects, and share amazing discoveries. But before I started working on the show, I got my start in the tech industry as a NASA data-naut and director of NASA's International Space Apps Challenge. As a NASA data-naut, I work on innovative projects with data scientists, engineers, statisticians, storytellers, artists, and creators from a wide variety of backgrounds. Our goal is to further our skills as data scientists working in the space industry and to create projects for a better future. Now, as a director of space apps, NASA's annual Global Hackathon, I lead project teams that are addressing earth science and space innovation themed problems. Space Apps is not like your average hackathon. It is the largest space innovation challenge in the world with over 225 locations and 25,000 participants each year. Engineers, scientists, and STEM professionals come together, but so do students, teachers, artists, and creators in an effort to build a project that will address real-world problems. We value diversity because we know that the most innovative solutions that are best for everyone, they come from people that have different life experiences and diverse backgrounds. My location in Washington, D.C. puts an emphasis on advocating for women and diversity in STEM and space each year. As a Black woman working in STEM, I often have found myself as the only person who looks like me in places and spaces that I occupy. It's important for me to open the door for others who are underrepresented in this industry because I didn't grow up seeing many people who looked like me doing what I'm doing now. There's a saying that one of our producers for Mission Unstoppable, she says it often. Her name is Gina Davis, and she is a Hollywood legend. She often says, if you can see it, you can be it. For me, I really identify with that because it wasn't until I was at a summer STEM camp in high school that I ever met a woman who worked as an engineer. I never met a woman or a person of color that was a scientist or engineer until I was about 15 years old. I spent 3 years going to that summer camp, and all we studied was science, tech, coding, and math, so all of your STEM subjects. Being around my peers and professors inspired me to become an engineer. And without this experience, I wouldn't have known that I could have been an engineer in the first place. Fast forward to applying to college. After a lot of research, I decided I wanted to study systems engineering, which is a really cool kind of engineering that came about in the 1970s. I applied to my dream schools and some safety schools, and ultimately decided on the George Washington University in Washington, D.C. Now, I wish I could tell you that it was easy and that I didn't have any struggles, but that was not the case. I came from a military family. I'm Black American and Irish, and I have 5 sisters. So growing up, we constantly traveled from one place to the next because of my dad's job in the US Army. After living such a nomadic life, I thought I was really great at meeting new people, making friends, and of course, getting adjusted to new places because I have done it so much. But I didn't expect all of the obstacles that I would encounter in school. I was getting adjusted to the environment, but it wasn't an easy task. I was one of very few women and one of very few women of color in my courses. By the time I graduated, I was the only Black woman graduating from the George Washington University with a degree in systems engineering in my year. So after university, I then embarked on a journey into the world of technology. My first jobs were as a data analyst and a project manager, and I was given a lot of responsibility really early on, which in hindsight I think it was really great because it pushed me to find my passion, which is data science. You may have heard the phrase, data is the new gold, and it's true. Data, or information, can tell a story about almost anything. Data can give us insights into things like social media, the environment, and even space. I didn't grow up dreaming of a career in the space industry, but that's exactly where I found myself headed after I was accepted into NASA's Datanaut program. Now, Imposter Syndrome nearly kept me from applying to the program, but I'm so glad that it didn't. Imposter Syndrome is when, despite your qualifications and your accomplishments, you feel as if you're not good enough and that you're like an imposter. This is something that a lot of people say that they sometimes struggle with, and I totally understand because I've been there. Did you know that more women than men opt out of applying to jobs if they think that they don't meet enough of the qualifications? Women are already underrepresented in the tech industry. We shouldn't hold ourselves back from opportunity. I'm a proponent for throwing your name in the hat and trying anyway. Without gaining the courage to apply to the Datanauts program, I never would have been accepted, and I would not have had the opportunity to do the really cool things that I've been able to do. My favorite project that I've worked on, I would have to say, it was the 2018 mission to Mars called NASA's InSight mission. The purpose of the mission is to study the deep interior of Mars to gain insights on how the planet was formed and its history since. I created an initiative called Empowerment Through Coding and partnered with Girls Who Code to go behind the scenes of the mission and cover the rocket launch and landing over a period of 6 months. I flew to NASA's Jet Propulsion Lab in California to get a close-up look at the lander that was being sent to Mars. I got to participate in global press events, hang out in mission control, and yes, it really does look like how it seems in the movies. I got to meet and interview the engineers who built the lander, which is similar to a rover except it's stationary, so once it lands, it doesn't move. I got to take a behind-the-scenes tour of the jet hangar and get right up close to the rocket before watching it launch. I was able to share the journey with tens of thousands of women and girls in the Girls Who Code community. One of the largest takeaways that I wanted to share was that careers in technology can be really amazing, and you can get to do awesome stuff, like see a rocket take off and head to Mars. because all too often these career paths are not shown to enough people. They're not shown to enough girls. As Miss Universe Ireland, I got to take my programs even further. I used my year to advocate for women and diversity in STEM on an even larger scale. One of my favorite memories as Miss Universe Ireland was when I got to bring the Miss Universe organization to NASA for the very first time in history. I was invited to NASA Goddard to meet with the deputy director, who's in charge of over 10,000 engineers and scientists. I was given a tour and ultimately was asked to cover the historic all-women's spacewalk that was happening that day for Miss Universe for an audience of over 3 million people. It was such a surreal dream come true to be able to bring my two worlds together and show the power of women. Now, I've been working in fashion and beauty since I was 19 years old, but I also work in technology and space. I hope that my story shows that there is no linear path that you have to follow. More importantly, you should follow your passions and not be deterred just because there are obstacles. There have been times where I questioned my path and wondered if I would have to give up one passion for the other, but I haven't yet, and I don't plan to, because we as women are multifaceted. We have a wide variety of interests and skills and talents, and we should be able to celebrate that and share the stories of dynamic women that do not fit the stereotype. If you have big dreams, don't be afraid to go after your goals and reach for the stars, because you just might catch one.
Thank you, Fig, for sharing your story with us. I hope those of you who are able to listen found inspiration. Now it is my pleasure to introduce Skyler Matson. Skyler is a trustee for the foundation, and she's also your biggest fan. She has a welcome message for us tonight, and then we'll introduce our panel, Digital Technology, Inspiring the Next Generation. Just want to let you know that after the panel speakers present their ideas, there will be a live Q&A. So do sit back, relax, and enjoy what they have to say, and then get ready to enter into that Zoom chat. Skyler, over to you.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Pathfinders Winter Institute. I'm Skyler Matson, president of Wong Duty, the global experience and design platform for Infosys. I have the honor of introducing our panel called Digital Technology, Inspiring the Next Generation. But before I do, I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge our teachers and thank you for inspiring the next generation. I have 3 sons at home, and I feel so much responsibility to prepare them for the world. And I rely on their teachers to help them learn so many of the critical skills that will help them succeed. You have one of the hardest and one of the most important jobs in the world. I am so grateful for you. And I admire you for joining us here at Pathfinders to hone your skills and to gain new knowledge and hopefully even more inspiration that you can take back to your students. Now on to the panel. I'd like to first introduce our moderator, Steph Santoso, Senior Program Fellow at Infosys Foundation USA. Steph is a founding board member of Nation of Makers and received her PhD in Information Science at Cornell University. This is very cool. From 2014 to 2016, she served as the first senior advisor for making at the White House, where she helped develop President Obama's Nation of Makers initiative. Stephanie is joined by 3 panelists. The first is Armando Samosa. Armando is a new media artist, technologist, social entrepreneur, and educator. He currently serves as CEO and co-founder of Code Society, an edtech startup that creates original hip-hop music, videos, and activities that teach computational thinking concepts.
Code Society, your source for hip-hop music that teaches computer science and computational thinking. We teach how to think before learning to code. Check out our music, videos, courses, and merch at codesociety.com.
Next, we have Leah King. Leah is the Director of Education at Women's Audio Mission in San Francisco, where she manages creative audio technology and music production programs for youth and adults in over 30 countries. Women's Audio Mission empowers over 4,000 women and girls and gender-expansive individuals every year to amplify their voices with music technology, production training, and mentoring in the only professional recording studios in the world built and run entirely by women. Very cool.
And I'm so happy to have found this amazing community for people to just kind of express themselves musically and learn and collaborate with one another.
And finally, we have my colleague and friend, Sean Lagrange. Sean is a commercial television and film editor here in LA, where I'm also based. Sean worked as an assistant editor on the George Clooney film, The Ides of March, before becoming a commercial editor. He's worked with huge global brands like Nike, AT&T, McDonald's, Google. I'm sure you've seen some of his commercials. Last year, he edited Reese's Take 5 Super Bowl commercial and a PSA campaign with Will Ferrell.
What's that?
Reese's Take 5 bar. Chocolate, peanuts, caramel, peanut butter, pretzels.
Never heard of it.
Where have you been? Under a rock?
New to me.
What, were you born yesterday? Raised by wolves? Are you clueless? Head in the sand?
That's offensive, Trish.
Yeah, Trish.
You from another planet?
Oh, Trish, none of us have heard of Take 5, so who looks stupid now?
Reese's Take 5, the best bar you've never heard of.
This is such an impressive lineup. I'm so excited about the discussion that is about to come. And now I will hand it back to Steph to get things rolling. Thank you all again for being here. I wish you the best of luck here at Pathfinders, and of course, when you return home to your students.
Hello, Pathfinders participants. You've just seen some highlights of the incredible work of our panelists, and we're really looking forward to a wonderful conversation with Leah, Armando, and Sean about how they're inspiring students to get involved in digital media, technology, and computer science through music, advertising, and entertainment. We're being joined by hundreds of teachers from across the US who are working with K-12 students of all ages. So I wanted to begin by asking each of you to introduce yourself and share just a little more about the work that you're doing. If we could start with Armando.
Great. Hello, everyone. I hope you're doing well. Hope you find yourselves in good health and spirits in these difficult times. My name is Armando Samosa. I am the CEO and co-founder of an edtech startup called Code Society. We create original hip-hop music, videos, and learning activities that teach computational thinking concepts. So imagine schoolhouse rock for computer science. And we exist to transform young people from passive users of technology to empowered innovators and developers. So happy to be here to share more about our work and to connect and speak with such amazing people.
Thanks so much, Armando. Leah, would you like to share a little bit more about yourself and your work?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Leah King. I'm the Director of Education at Women's Audio Mission. We're a San Francisco-based nonprofit that serves women, girls, and gender-expansive people all over the world, actually over 4,000 people a year, teaching audio education and music technology courses. Our goal is really to expand the number of women, girls, and gender-expansive folks who are working in audio, because truly less than 5% of the sounds that you hear regularly, whether that's radio, TV, podcasting, anything in media, is created or produced or engineered by a woman. And we are really, truly working to change the face of sound. So I'm really happy to be here and talk with you a bit about how we make that happen.
Thanks so much, Leah. And that's a really staggering statistic that it's just 5% or less than 5%. And Sean, would love to hear more about yourself and your work.
Hi there, my name's Sean Lagrange. I am an editor in commercials as well as short film and music videos. I'm based in Los Angeles, working for a company called Arcade Edit. yeah, we do a lot of work, mostly in advertising world, but we also, it ranges from broadcast to social media and to other types of advertising mediums. Yeah, I do a lot of work with agencies that span from Wine Kennedy to BBDO, as well as clients like Nike and Google. So yeah, that's a quick history on my work.
Thanks so much. And so many of the teachers that are joining us today are working with students of different ages. And when I think about my own experience, and I'm sure when you think about your experience of where you are now, there are probably a variety of different experiences that you had growing up as a kid that really helped shape where you are today and inspired you to do the work that you're doing now. And I was wondering if you all could just share, one or two of those experiences that really inspired you to do the work that you're doing in digital media, music, and advertising. If we could start with Leah.
Sure. Yeah. So I'm a music producer, DJ, and event organizer, actually, and I've been creating and producing music since high school, maybe even since middle school. Actually, I started off actually playing bass in punk bands in the Bay Area. Punk was very big in the 90s, might not be as big now. Anyway, so I realized at a really young age that there weren't a lot of folks who looked like me, who were not just playing instruments in the bands, but also working behind the decks and doing all the recording and processing, engineering, mixing, and mastering of the music and the sounds that I love to hear. So pretty quickly, when I got into my sort of professional career, I started to dig a lot deeper into teaching myself a lot of the technology that I wanted to learn in order to create the sounds that I wanted to hear. And that actually went on for years until I found a network full of women and other folks of varying gender identities throughout New York City and internationally, where I was living for a few years, who were teaching each other how to create a lot of sounds. So we're drastically underrepresented in engineering fields. And so that's why it's a real honor now to work on the education programming within Women's Audio Mission, so that we can really help encourage people to enter those careers and stay in those careers. Because a lot of the challenges that we're also facing is it's not just the matter of learning about how to do these things and how to really get yourself a position working in audio technology, engineering, or computer science, but also knowing how to advocate for yourself once you're in those spaces. Because if you're not really very represented, you might not have a lot of support. So we have mentoring and internship opportunities, as well as a lot of different networking and education opportunities for the folks who are involved in Women's Audio Mission to help empower people to really stay in these jobs and expand their skill sets and feel really good about it. So we hope that that can really impact everyone overall.
Thanks for sharing, Leah. And what I got from what you just shared was really the importance of finding the community where you felt like you belonged and connecting to individuals that really provided guidance and encouraged you and supported you along the way. Was there a particular, or maybe there were a few, but was there a particular, did you have mentors growing up, or a particular teacher or teachers that, like, when you look back, you thought, oh, that was somebody that really nurtured my natural interests in music and music production?
It's so interesting. Actually, I didn't really have a lot of mentors growing up. I really did rely on the internet after college to get a lot of the resources that would help me on my journey. I spent a lot of time, funny enough, going to the Apple store and meeting folks who were working with a lot of the free resources that my laptop was providing me. And so I really feel like I missed a lot of opportunities to learn at a young age about all the different kinds of programs that I end up using now. So a lot of what we're doing in Women's Audio Mission is making those avenues available for people to find mentors, to find leaders, to find folks in the field who can help guide our young folks towards careers and also really provide them the resources to find all the different ways of getting involved, because it's not just engineering or producing. There's also sound design, there's post-production effects, there's tons of different ways that we can get involved. So I think for me, there weren't a lot of resources, and now there's a lot more with what we have accessible via the internet. So I'm really trying to help make those connections happen for people.
Thanks for sharing. And Sean, I'm wondering if you could share a little bit about what inspired you to go into advertising.
Yeah, kind of like Leah, I was a bit of a tinkerer. When I was a kid, I was really into like building my own computers and websites. And when my parents got a VHS camcorder, I was really into filming and like making edits in the camera. And from there, I like Leah was saying, I didn't really have a lot of mentors in that field. I grew up in Maine, so it wasn't really a strong film and media centered location. So it was a lot of practicing on my own and like learning tools that I thought were interesting. And as I went through schooling and college, I just started to hone in on what was my interests. And when I finally decided I wanted to be an editor, I pursued advertising because I liked the pace of the work and the speed it worked at. And I was able to find mentors in that field where, in hindsight, I wish I had those opportunities at a younger age. But you know, it's been a rewarding experience at the same time to personally push those boundaries. Yeah.
I feel like there's some shared experiences there between you and Leah, in the sense of when there weren't that many opportunities available to you to find mentors, or mentors weren't necessarily readily accessible, that not to say that technology is a substitute for mentorship, but you were resourceful in the sense of, like, you know, finding other ways to teach yourself the things that you wanted to learn and the skills that you wanted to learn. And that kind of mindset, that sort of like maker mindset of just DIY and really trying to figure things out for yourself, I think is really important today, right? And we're seeing students do that so much more now, and it's exciting to hear that was a really seminal part of your journey into the work that you're doing now. Armando, I'd love to hear a little bit more about some of those experiences that you had as a kid that really shaped the work that you're doing.
Yeah, no, great. So I'm originally from Denver, Colorado. I moved out to New York City 10 years ago. So I built my career and created a creative professional pathway out here. I'm an artist, creative, and technologist. I come from a family of educators who have always believed that education is ultimately the pathway to liberation and self-determination, right? So it's education is a radical act, right, of not only kind of building knowledge, but of self-actualization and kind of finding your path and finding your truest joy and living your authentic life in the world. So I really committed my career to the intersection of those spaces, to engage, inspire, and retain youth of color in learning how to use the tools of the day, right? So the technology of the day to ultimately kind of chart their own pathways, right? So I think the unfortunate reality is, you know, too often a lot of education systems can be oppressive to communities of color, to kind of a spectrum of folks whose stories, experiences, innovations, histories aren't always taught, right? And you know, or taught secondary to dominant culture, right? So there's always this beautiful opportunity to use, you know, culturally responsive approaches to translate, you know, a whole realm of kind of complex concepts and engage and inspire young people in pursuing their kind of freedom and creativity and joy, right? So for me, just an essential component is instilling joy and creativity, right, as a critical part of the learning experience, using self-expression and storytelling to ultimately, you know, define those paths, you know. So that's kind of part of my personal experience, but of how that personal experience has ultimately informed my career path and my approach to my pedagogical approach and professional approach to creating these interactive learning experiences within communities.
That is a really great transition into the next part of our conversation. I love that you brought up culturally responsive approaches. And, for Leah and Armando specifically, I'm curious if you all could share a little bit more about how you are engaging underrepresented students and youth in the work that you're doing through WHAM and through Code Society. Each of you talked about, really growing up, potentially not necessarily feeling like you belonged or needing to find your people or your community. And I think that's so important for youth today as well. Could you talk a little bit more about what strategies or approaches you're actually using in your work to help young people find their voice and use their craft, what they're doing in your programs, to express themselves?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. I can get started. I think one of the things that happened with WHAM is, as soon as the pandemic hit, we had a lot of students who were dealing with what we're calling the digital divide. A lot of students didn't have internet access, didn't have computers at home. When we first started some of our classes this past April, students were calling in, from their cell phone, maybe from the back of the family car, while the family was out trying to get some groceries. We had students who were calling in with multiple family members on the call at the same time, a lot going on in the background, a lot of things happening, trying to use hotspots, et cetera. So we immediately tried to pivot all of our programs to be as widely accessible as possible, meaning that they're accessible via Chromebook, tablet, or phone. Every single thing that we are teaching is web-based. You don't have to download anything other than Zoom to access our classes. And then also they're all student-centered. Every single component of every single class that we have is about the student experience and having them share not just what's important to them right now in social media or politically, but also personally, culturally, physiologically. I'm trained in socio-emotional health as well as culturally responsive pedagogies and trauma-informed care. And that's a huge part of how we're approaching our curriculum development. We had a student show up really early on who had to relocate as a result of the pandemic, who was calling in, as we found out later, from a bedroom with the door closed, and her family did not know that she was, what exactly was happening in the classes. They just heard all this laughter and giggling, and they were really confused because she's a really shy kid. And they were like, okay, is this class just with some of her friends? Like, why is there so much noise coming out of the room? And she would finish our classes and say to her family, nothing was really happening. I wasn't really doing anything. It was just some music stuff, whatever. So then we started having our parent and community nights a little later on in the year so that we could talk with our community members, parents and guardians about exactly what was going on in class. And they were like, this has changed everything. This has really modified her experience of the pandemic radically because she was isolated and shy and concerned about how she was going to get through her school year, but ended up coming to all of our classes. And we thought of her as one of the most outgoing, creative, and engaging students that we had, because in this context that was so student-centered, so musical and creative, she was truly thriving, and thriving with a lot of the other students as well. They actually formed a band, and they were making songs on the band and doing a podcast together. So that's just one little story of how we were able to really bring about sort of new levels of engagement for students, whether or not they're shy or have a different learning challenges to begin with. This style of engagement has actually been really fruitful for some of the young folks we work with.
That's incredible. Thanks so much for sharing, Leah. And it just, that example just, I think, illustrates how important it is for students to have different outlets to express themselves and what they might be experiencing and going through. And learning is really important, but you have to consider that students are whole people, and we have to take a holistic, whole person approach to how we're creating these learning opportunities for our young people. So thanks for sharing that. Armando, would love to get your thoughts on this question as well.
Yeah, no, excellent. That's amazingly, incredible work. Hats off, and continue that amazing, dynamic, powerful work that you're doing. Within Code Society, we essentially founded our company in response to the explosion in coding and technology education. So beginning kind of 2010, 2011, we really saw the explosion in coding organizations, and how important coding as a 21st century skill is for the development of our young people and the next generation of leaders, right? I think one of the biggest challenges though is there's an overemphasis on coding, on just straight syntax, right? On Python, on JavaScript, on HTML, on CSS, just starting right away in the syntax part of it all, right? Which ultimately the unfortunate byproduct of that is there's such a dependency on just memorization, right? It's a memorization of commands, it's a memorization of syntax, and unfortunately what happens is that so many learning styles and so many kind of diverse folks are really excluded from that teaching style, right? Not everybody learns like that, right? So even though there's so many different coding organizations that respond directly to diversifying the tech landscape, the teaching, the pedagogy, right? The way that these skills are taught still excludes just such a vast majority of not only ethnic but gender backgrounds, and we see the disparity ultimately continue to exist. So what we do specifically in Code Society is we focus on kind of the pre-coding concepts, or what the field is calling computational thinking concepts, right? And we teach through culturally responsive approaches, which ultimately lead to open and creative pathways, abstract thinking, and the application of these concepts in our real world, right? So we use the power of youth culture, of hip hop, of music to engage, inspire, and translate these concepts into a language that resonates with young people, right? So it's just tapping into the current lives of young people. So an example of that is that we use the viral dance phenomenon, TikToks and Instagram, these dance challenges that exist, but we actually tap into that experience and teach the concept of algorithms, through the viral dance challenge, right? So we break down and teach and translate the concepts of pattern recognition, decomposition, abstraction, in order for young people to understand more of kind of like why and what's behind these concepts, rather than just the memorization of syntax, right? So we're laying a theoretical foundation so that young people will ultimately be more successful once they get into coding syntax and they're able to like build their own concepts. And the way that we do that, we released a 10-track album on all streaming platforms, on Spotify, Tidal, Apple Music. We have videos on YouTube, and you can always see more at codesociety.com, right? Which is spelled CODESCTY.com, right? So again, tapping into the tools, the vernacular, the language, the culture of young people, and ultimately using that to translate these concepts in a way that resonates and ultimately makes it applicable to their lives.
Yeah, that approach to really making computer science relevant to kids and students, I think, is so powerful. I think everyone has heard, like, you can't be it if you can't see it. If you can't see yourself, in a field or doing something, then you don't realize that it's possible, that you can't be it. And I think that's probably similar to the case for you too, Leo, the way you have been talking about your experience as a bass player, DJ, growing up, and really trying to forge a path so that other young women and girls and can see themselves in those fields. So Sean, so much of advertising is about storytelling, creating a message, and communicating that to an audience, which is really an essential life skill. And I was just curious if you could talk a little bit more about the ways you use technology to do this and the skills that you feel are really complementary.
Yeah, so for technology, it's really a component of how I work. I think, You know, the software I use is just fundamental to how I build my edits and my stories, the projects I work on. It's also just, it's hugely important for post-production in general, where we have to understand how a project that's been shot gets finished, and every component of that requires some form of technology. If I go, you know, more broadly, and maybe this is, I have a background in new media. That was my education. A little blend of computer science, but also visual media arts. But one of the ways we would approach things is through systems. And in terms of skills, I find that editing is really an understanding of several different systems and languages, right? So there's a visual system where you have to know why a shot was framed a certain way and if it can be manipulated. But you also have to understand the data behind it, you know, the resolution of a shot at, or the frames per second. And really all those components, it's important, especially if there's a visual effects shot, and how I then use technology or software to manipulate that footage and get it to a point where we envision what the director or my clients wanted. So there's visual system, you know, then there's also an audio system where I have to know how to assemble different layers of audio, you know, whether adjusting volume, pitch, speed. You know, Leah mentioned more about the music sides. I have to incorporate that as well. And I'm trying to build a soundscape that communicates clearly to the viewer. And then going to the topic about a life skill, I also find there's the human system where I have to have a dialogue, not only with a director, a music composer, sound designer, film colorist, visual effects artist, on top of like an advertising agency or a client, such as like the brand. All these people, they operate on a different language and they use different technologies of their own. So it's my job with some level of understanding of how all of those work and bring them together to help everybody deliver a final product.
Wow, that's really, what you just shared is really interesting, just in the sense of, I think when you think about how you see the world, a lot of people tend to identify as being either visual, or maybe they like the sense that they most are attuned to is audio, right, hearing. And what you're saying as somebody who works in film editing and advertising is that you have to think in multiple facets, right, multiple dimensions of the world, and the technology plays a really critical role in helping you to do that, but you also need to have that expertise and the set of technical skills. Thank you so much for sharing, Sean. That was really, really incredible.
Cool. Thank you.
So before we pivot to this last question, I did just want to highlight for Pathfinders participants that we're going to have a live Q&A after we wrap here. And so for those of you who, I'm sure a number of you have some burning questions for Leah, Armando, and Sean, just based off of what they've already shared, if you could go ahead and feel free to share those questions in the Q&A box. And we will hop right to the Q&A right after we're finished up with the conversation here. So with this last question, I wanted to ask each of you, you know, what is your advice to teachers about the role that they can play in engaging students in computer science or maker education and digital technologies through the things that they already love, like music, films, and other forms of entertainment? You all already spoke and shared kind of the formative experiences that you've had as kids growing up, and then also, you know, how that has led you to the work that you're doing now. So what is the advice that you would give to teachers who really want to engage students in things that they're already really interested in? If we could maybe start with Armando, that would be great.
Great, excellent. No, first and foremost, I always celebrate, commend, and acknowledge, all of the educators in the field, in our space, especially in these times. Hats off. Stay grounded and focused. Take care of yourself and your well-being in these times. So thank you for the work that you do, and so much of what you do has always and will continue to be so critical in the development of our young people. And what I've learned in just my experience, my approach to education, my pedagogical training, is to specifically, it's a little bit cliche, but to ultimately, meet students where they are, right? Genuinely meet them where they are. Ask them, what they do outside of school. What are when they're not in school or when they're not in kind of formal learning environments, what are they into? What are they tapped into? What kind of interests do they have? And once they tell you, learn about it, see what you can do to, to build a foundation and to just kind of learn some kind of key concepts. Because then the beauty and the opportunity to activate those interests and find connections between what they love and what you're teaching, right, becomes this gift of translation, right? And translation is so powerful, right? To then be able to say, oh, well, that thing that you like is kind of like this thing that I'm trying to teach you, right? And here are the connections and here are the similarities between those things. And that's a culturally responsive approach, right? Which in terms of culturally responsive doesn't always mean like ethnic group necessarily, right? Or that kind of cultural, but like just what they're interested in, what their experiences in reality is all about. And being able to bridge those gaps, connect those dots in creative and interesting ways, and really allow them to, express themselves through joy and excitement is powerful, it's transformational. And that's what we've really kind of grounded our work in, and really try to focus on teaching. We teach other teachers how to do this, other educators how to do this, and that's really kind of our passion, So again, I encourage everybody to keep doing the incredible work that you're doing.
Thanks so much, Armando. Leah, I would love to hear your thoughts about how teachers can continue to engage their students.
For sure, yeah, and thanks so much for that answer, Armando. I totally agree with everything you said, and I also really agree with teachers being really focused on their own self-care. I do start all of my trainings with making sure everyone has water and snack and the bio break time built out for themselves, enough air, a warm blanket. Same for you as it is for your students. Make sure that you've had something to eat, that you've had some rest, and if that's not possible, try to figure out ways to make yourself as comfortable as possible and as approachable as possible so that you can be there for your students and get excited, as Armando was saying, about the things that they're excited about. We have had some really illuminating and interesting times in our classes. For example, we're doing a sound design class. I had no idea how much our students are interested in anime, and we went down this whole rabbit hole of learning so much about anime, which is so different than the last semester where we were doing so much on songwriting and songwriting technology, where I got to learn so much about the inner workings of Billie Eilish and all of Billie Eilish's music and how it compares to Ariana Grande, and production quality and sound design and all the different ways that's also played out in the music videos, etc., which then helps us figure out all the different ways that we can get involved in career pathways, as researching the people who are creating those sounds. And just as Armando was saying, I mean, it's very similar for us as well. We start at the sort of the point where the students already are, whatever it is that they were excited about that day, that weekend, this morning, what their peers, their family members are getting into. And then we have our curriculum pivot off of that. There's always ways to make those connections. We try to have as many resources as possible in our pocket, so that every class has a bit of opportunity for some variety, so that we can still fulfill the same goal, the same learning goals and standards within our curriculum, but we have a variety of different ways that we get there that are ultimately still going to fulfill our mission of encouraging and inspiring our young folks to get more involved in production and engineering. So I think there's a lot of different ways to do it, and whatever you need to do to train yourself to get more aware of these resources, just jump in there. I know I used to also do hip hop arts education throughout New York City for years, and I used to teach breakdancing to school teachers. And as soon as they started learning more about how their bodies move in space, that really help them connect with their students in the classroom. So that's a really similar pathway that you can find during this time of COVID when we're spending so much time on our phones and on our computers. There's a lot that young folks are doing to still stay active and stay engaged. Figure out what those things are, and you can do them too. And then you're gonna get just as hype about the things that your students are hype about. And then it's just gravy. Then your classes, I mean, then everyone's just having a great time, and that's how everyone can all learn together. I'm getting really caught up right now because I'm thinking about all the wild TikTok stuff that we've been doing, but I mean, I'll just try to keep it on topic to say, yes, there's lots of opportunities to get involved with their students by just jumping into the excitement that they're already bringing to your classes.
Thanks so much, Leah. And maybe after this, you can share some of the links to the amazing TikTok stuff that you are doing so that the teachers participating can check it out.
Usually what I do is I try to get teachers to do, some spins, a little top racking. That's always been my favorite, to get people, just once you're in your body, then you can really start to engage in everything. But
I love it. Well, Sean, I'd love to turn to you and just hear your thoughts on this question.
Yeah, first of all, I think what Leah and Armando said is great. I kind of wish I had more of that in my growing up. But I think for me, really, the teachers who I feel had the greatest impact were the ones who found practical ways on how to approach technology with a creative angle. So really the most memorable lessons I have is when a teacher had an objective for us at like a creative objective for us to reach, that they didn't really give us insight on how to get there with the technology we had. I mean, they would say, like, here's the software you can use, but you had to figure out your own way to get there. So really it allowed us to explore our own boundaries and how to understand how the software and the hardware worked. And it helped me not only have a greater appreciation for that technology, but it helped me push my own creative goals. So really it's a mindset of how I use technology now on just a number of situations, from editing, but also from how I approach a project with either sound or visual effects. It's just a whole multitude of different ways that I really think was a valuable lesson in my life. Yeah.
I love that, and I think what you shared is so important. Just this idea that creating these opportunities for your students or any youth that you may be working with to have the space and the time and the environment for open-ended creativity, and to celebrate. I think oftentimes there is an emphasis on the right answer, one right answer, and that's not really how the world works, right? There are often, most of the time, multiple solutions to a problem or a challenge that you face in your life. And so I think what you're sharing, Sean, is that those experiences were the ones that resonated best with you in terms of like how technology could help to play a role in the work that you were doing when you were growing up, and then how that carries back into the work that you're doing now. So really appreciate that. With that, that wraps up our conversation with our wonderful panelists. I did want to just say that I think each of you, the way in which you talk about the work you're doing with students and your craft really, for me, reminded me of a quote by Mr. Rogers, which is, he would say that the greatest gift that you can give to a child is to do what you love in front of them. And I think that really ties a lot of what we've been talking about today together, in that, as you go out into the world, sometimes what can be really effective to create those opportunities for mentorship or to inspire a young person is to just show them what you're doing in front of them and show them, you know, what it is that you're passionate about in your craft and why it's important to you as a starting point. So with that, I just would love to thank each of you for taking the time to share your insights and your experiences with us at Winter Pathfinders. We're going to go right into our Q&A session for those of you who are going to join us. I hope everybody does. Please feel free to go ahead and add the questions that you have to the Q&A box right now, and we'll get to them in a minute. So thank you, Leah, Armando, and Sean. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank
you
you
so much.
All right, I am excited to move us right into our live Q&A session with Leah, Armando, and Sean. Thanks, everybody, for joining us. I wanted to kick us off with a question from Celeste. I think Armando started to touch on an answer to this question, but I thought it was just a really powerful question that would be great for all of our panelists to weigh in on, which was, knowing what you know now, if you could give yourself advice as a high school student, what would it be? If we wanted to start with Leah, that'd be great.
Great. Hi, thanks. Gosh, it's funny because growing up in the Bay, I feel like there was a lot of empowerment opportunities for me. And I did get people telling me a lot of the time, go for it, have no fear, you know, achieve your dreams and seek out what you want. But I feel like even if people tell you that, what you see isn't always affirming that same message. So I guess I would probably have said to myself to live in my imagination a bit more and continue to fulfill my vision of what I see for myself, even if I don't see it out in the world. Because I feel like there was a huge divide there for me, that I knew what was true. I knew that I could go out and achieve things. I knew that there was a lot of opportunity for me to engage in stuff that maybe wasn't necessarily what people who look like me or of my background are doing, or maybe something that's a little off the beaten path, or maybe not, or just really to just go out and do and be. I got a lot of great messages, but I still I didn't believe it. It took a long time for me to believe it. So I think, yeah, I would say to myself, just keep writing and keep, just keep digging inside to find that truth for myself, I think. And that I think goes for all age groups, not just for high school.
That's great. I feel like what you're talking about there too is really focusing in on your creative confidence, right? Like focusing on like your confidence to like to be able to be creative and do the things that you want to do and stay focused on yourself. So thanks for that.
Oh, and intellectually and interpersonally, all those things. Yeah. Jump in there. Yeah.
Thanks, Leah. Sean, would love to hear what what advice you'd give to your high school self.
I think I'd probably just tell myself to keep creating, keep making things, even if it's, you know, I hit dead ends or I get frustrated in something, just keep finding ways to make new stuff. And don't be afraid to reach out to those who inspire the type of stuff you're creating. You know, it's not everyone will respond to you, but if you have questions or there's something that you find you hit a roadblock on, just feel free to reach out or email, you know, in my case, directors or editors or someone that you really like their work. And for specifically for high school, I would say start looking at internships, thinking, because in college, I had no idea what internships were until probably my junior or senior year in college. And looking back, I wish I'd known that sooner so I could have started exploring more and seeing what specifically I liked and enjoyed at that time.
Thanks so much, Sean. Armando, would love to hear about what you would tell your high school self.
Great. Shout out the Infosys team for the awesome swag that we have. I got the bandanas,
love it.
The mugs and everything here. We're here representing. So hello, everyone. Excited to be here with you. You know, what I would tell my younger self, you know, is to trust yourself, you know, trust the loves and the passions that you have cultivated and been focusing on. I know in my personal experience, I was an artist from a very young age, you know, foundation in visual art and drawing and painting. And that's what I would do. You know, I would get on the back of my quizzes, I would draw, right? You know, in all of these other subjects. And I would tell myself to trust that passion and love, and more importantly, find ways to connect that passion and love with what's happening in class and what's happening in the world. And, you know, how do you find kind of the connections and the pathways in between those things, you know? But to trust yourself, you know, I think, you know, when we're young, you know, we often sometimes, you know, we question, you know, so much of our own identities and experience, you know. So I'll tell myself that, again, that creative confidence to trust yourself and to find those connections and pathways.
I feel like I would need to tell my high school self that same thing as well. Well, we did have a couple of questions come through, Leah, around just your, thoughts that you might have in terms of engaging girls in STEM, really recognizing that there are just significant challenges that include, stereotypes and preconceived notions of who works in these fields and who are good in these subjects in school. So what are some thoughts that you have around engagement, and then also like recruitment and really getting girls to stick with some of the programs that you've been working on, and just engaging them in STEM more broadly?
Sure. I'd say hire women, hire female instructors, just pay women. If you work in a leadership field, or as a supervisory or in funding, support women and believe in women, and also bring examples of women to your classes. If you think that there isn't a woman engineer that does that, there probably is. Find her out there, Google that. Reach out to a lot of the women in engineering networks that exist. Email us at Women's Audio Mission if you're not sure if a woman does that thing, or if you can find an example or a video or a book or a podcast or an interview or a lecture about that topic. Reach out to your network and find women who do that thing. That is really what's going to inspire and engage and show girls that it's something that they can do. And also we speak to our own experience, and that helps girls speak to their experiences as well. So I think that's really where it starts, is prioritizing voice. And from there, letting those young women, once they're in the classroom, once you have the content, once you're making the topics happen with them, let them create and let them show you what they know. And always approach them as the experts in their own education. They know what they need to succeed, and you're there to help bring that out of them. So I think it's just about prioritizing that voice every step of the way. And that's an intersectional lens that goes for every aspect of empowering people who are underrepresented. That goes for empowering Black people in engineering and in STEM. That goes for empowering people with different abilities. Everybody who's underrepresented in STEM, and there are many of us who are underrepresented. So there's never enough effort in that vein. You can always do more, and if you need ideas, definitely reach out.
Thanks so much, Leah. For Sean, we had a few questions around just interest in learning a little bit more about the tech skills that you use mostly day to day. I think you talked a little bit about that in the panel, but if you had any additional information around that. And then also just, you've worked on a whole bunch of really cool projects. I'm curious about one that's your favorite, or one of your favorites that you could share with us.
Okay. I'll start with the first. So I think I saw this other question on there. I use every day, I use an editing program called Avid Media Composer. And I believe they have a student platform that's also free to use or at a reduced rate. But that's what I use mostly day to day. I use it's a powerful tool where it's not only like putting pictures and videos together and audio. I do visual effects with it as well. Which can involve taking two images and merging them together, taking something that's green screen and adding graphics to it, or putting someone in a different environment. So that happens almost constantly. And then I'm also dealing with audio to a certain extent, where it's adding slight filters or effects. Yeah, that's pretty much where that's my daily tech experience. In terms of projects, there's a lot of fun ones I've played or I've done. I tend to remember the directors that I worked with or the people I worked with, and I've been very lucky to work with a lot of great directors. Some are film directors like David Gordon Green, TV directors like Peter Atencio. Harold Einstein is also a fabulous director. If I had to pick a project off the top of my head, probably this one called Canary, where it was just a really fun spot and really clever. Turned out great. So, yeah.
That's super exciting to hear, Sean. Thanks for sharing that. Actually, we did have a few questions just around from an equity perspective, right? Recognizing that some of these tools and technologies they can cost a lot of money, right? And I think, Sean, you had referenced that there is a free version of the Avid software that you actually work with on a daily basis. But also curious for Leah and Armando, and also Sean, if you have other ideas, are there low cost or free or open source software or platforms or applications that you would recommend teachers check out so that their students can have broader access to some of these opportunities?
Yes, definitely. I can pop in. We use a program that's run by Spotify called Soundtrap. They have an EDU arm. I think it's just soundtrap.com. They have low-cost subscription services. They also have a lot of partnerships with school systems. We have a partnership with SFUSD, so our students are able to access Soundtrap free of charge. They can do live collaboration for sound design in there. We also use BandLab for collaborative music stuff. We use online coding resources like Pencil Code and EarSketch, which are free web-based apps that students can access with Chromebooks. We also do a lot of sound effects and design. I had a bunch of them open here. A lot of times what we just do is we Google free online web-based resources, and then we try them out on Chromebooks and see if they work. And then we implement them in our classes as well. There's tons of free stuff. New stuff is coming out every day, actually, because so many of our students are just learning online. I was reading that a third of students in the United States have not entered a classroom at all this year. So there will be more opportunities for us to find free resources online, but the few that I listed are definitely ones we use a lot.
Yeah, excellent. To just jump in and add a little bit more, those are excellent resources. We use a lot of those as well. EarSketch is amazing. It teaches you, JavaScript and Python specifically through music composition. Excellent resource. A bunch of Code Society content is all free. Actually, all of our music is free and available on streaming platforms, so Tidal, Apple Music, Spotify. It's all standards aligned. So it's teaching national learning standards through the lyrics themselves. So, so that's a resource that you can all play in your classrooms, virtual classrooms or in-person classrooms, depending on where you are in the country right now. And as things improve, when students walk into your classroom, you could play that as just kind of a background or while students are working on group projects. So our music, our videos, our content, a bunch of actually some of our learning, our lessons are free as well too. So check it out, codesociety.com. Yeah, excellent.
For me, mine's probably a little bit more easy to get into. I think I would just find the software first. Like I mentioned, Avid Media Composer. I'm not sure there's another popular program called Adobe Premiere, but I don't know the pricing on that one, unfortunately. But what I found, even when I started off, was if I ever got stuck, I just went to YouTube. And it was always like just a matter of finding like, hey, I don't know how to do this one thing or one trick. So I would Google turned into this great resource for me where it's like, oh, this is how you do that. But really it was just to help me push my like creative ends. So it was really just finding those little ways to help understand the tools.
That was just an amazing wealth of resource suggestions. So thank you, panelists. We are actually getting to the end of our time with our Q&A session, but I did want to mention that our panelists are going to hang on for a few minutes afterwards, and will type in some answers to questions that we weren't able to get to in this live discussion. But before we go, I did want to thank the panelists. Thank you so much for just sharing your insights and your expertise and your personal experiences. Thank you to the teachers who are participating in Pathfinders Winter Institute. We're so excited to have you with us over the next few days. And then before we leave, I just wanted to ask Sean, Leah, and Armando, if you wouldn't mind just sharing ways that our teachers could get in touch with you, whether that's a website or social media, whatever you'd prefer. Sean, if you wanted to kick us off, that would be great.
Yeah, I don't have much of a social media presence, but I can. I'm happy to give out my email address, which is just
Is
Sean.
there a place where folks can see any of your work?
Yeah, absolutely. I do have, my company has a website which showcases some of the work all my coworkers and I have done. It's called arcadeedit.com.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Thanks so much.
Yeah.
Yeah, excellent. Feel free to connect with us through our website, codesociety.com. The society doesn't have any vowels, so that's CODESCTY.com. And it's the same for all social platforms, for Instagram, for Facebook, for LinkedIn, for all platforms, Twitter. So feel free at CODESCTY. And if you want to email me, Armando, ARMANDO at codesociety.com. I'll also include it here in the chat for everybody, all the attendees.
Awesome. Cool. Yeah. We are big on social media. We love it. We're on Instagram, Women's Audio Mission, just all one word. And then the youth program, Girls on the Mic, also on Instagram, just Girls on the Mic. And then our website is womensaudiomission.com. And then I'm L King at .org. Woo, I knew something came out when I said it. Womensaudiomission.org. And then I'm L King at womensaudiomission.org. So yeah, happy to stay in touch.
Thanks so much, Leah. And Sean, I'm so sorry. I think I transitioned before you were able to give your email address. So if you're still up to that, go for it.
It's and I'll type it out. It's seanlagrange@gmail.com.
Awesome. A big thank you to you all. And I'm gonna hand it over to Kate to take us to the next portion of our programming. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Have fun.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Steph, for that great moderation. And to Sean and Leah and Armando, you were super candid and full of resourceful suggestions to our teachers. So I invite all of you to really follow up with each of them and help bring more of those stories to your students. So we're soon to wrap. There's just one more section where I want to give you some tips and logistics to make your experience a seamless one tomorrow morning onward. So I'll take a moment just to review a few of those things and then let you get on with your Friday night. Speaking of the evening, in addition to all of the classroom engagement that you will have 8 hours a day, we wanted to make sure you had some time to relax and enjoy and kick back. And so we have invited Eddie B to be a guest comedian tomorrow night. Eddie B is increasingly gathering national acclaim for his ability to reach teachers and make them laugh. So we thought this was totally suitable in light of all of you and probably the weeks that you've had leading up till tonight. So tomorrow at 6 p.m. Eastern, Eddie will be doing a 30-minute bit. He will only be doing it live and there is no recording. So if you want to come and laugh and bring others to watch, please be prompt at 6 p.m. in the auditorium where you are now. Sunday night, we're leaving free. So an early happy Valentine's Day to everyone. And then Monday, we'd love to have you all back for the closing ceremony. We are going to be giving awards, and there is a new announcement I think that you'll all want to hear. So yes, the awards. Pathfinders is known for our social media awards. We love the creativity that happens, and we invite all of you to wear your bandanas, use your mugs, and please engage with us on the Facebook page for Pathfinders if you haven't yet. And for all social media, please use the handle Infi Foundation, as well as our hashtag Infi Pathfinders. We're going to sound like a super competitive bunch, but it's really all to build camaraderie and engagement amongst you. Over to the right, you see a picture of the teacher lounge. This is where we'd love to find you when you're not in class, i.e. during a coffee break or a lunch break. And you'll see there what's starred. Actually, this part appears throughout the platform. There's a leaderboard, and we've assigned points for you to navigate throughout the platform. And each day there might be other graphics and other messages that appear to keep the competition high. So please make sure you engage in the leaderboard. And actually to the right of that, you'll see a bit that's for your profile. Please feel free tomorrow when you have time to go into your profile. If you'd like to update a photo or expand upon your bio, we encourage you to do that. In this cozy room on our winter theme is the teacher lounge. And to the left, you'll see there are 3 chat features. There's the teacher shout out chat. There's a chat with PDs and chat with other teachers. So again, this is the place to just engage with one another, give us your feedback, and maybe some high fives to the instructors who are going to be working so hard with you. Over to the right, you'll see there are teacher talks. This is something new that we've introduced at this Pathfinders, and the foundation team has a whole production unit who are working with us to pull you together. They're going to match you in pairs to talk about what the past 6 to 12 months have been like. What has it been like to teach on Zoom? What have you learned? And maybe you want to share a bit more about your experience at Pathfinders. There's still room to sign up. So tomorrow, after you get settled in your courses, please pop over and take a look at that. We know virtual platforms present some technology challenges at times. So we do have an IT help desk. It will be staffed each day. And so if you are really struggling, please go to the IT help desk. And you'll see in the same room, I don't have a picture of it now, but I know you're all savvy to find it tomorrow. There's also a resource center. And in that resource center, there are documents that we really encourage you all to put into your backpacks or briefcases and be able to reference some follow-up information that's helpful, as well as some frequently asked questions that may help you navigate the campus or engage with one another. And then 2 announcements, and these are kind of fun, so I just wanted to take a quick moment. You can also find information in the Resource Center after. But this is the first Pathfinders where we have offered graduate credit. And we're doing this in partnership with the National Center for Computer Science Education at the College of St. Scholastica. And for that, I did need to read off my sheet. The foundation is supporting full scholarships for this 1 graduate credit for the first 25 teachers who apply and are accepted. So again, please ask us, follow up, and put your hat in the ring for that opportunity. And lastly, I hope you all see the CSTA logo on the screen. CSTA is one of our close partners, and I'm sure a number of you are members. If you aren't, we are offering a discount to Pathfinders attendees for the CSTA Plus membership, and that will be $15. So if you're not yet a member, we encourage you to become a part of that supportive community. So I have one final person whose words I want to share with you. So in honor of President's Day weekend from George Washington, a quick quote: "Education is the passport to the future, for tomorrow belongs to those who prepare for it today." And I can't think of any more people worthy of being saluted than all of you, all 278 of you who've taken President's Day weekend to invest in the future of your students. And for that, we really want to celebrate you. And we want to say, on behalf of the foundation team and our PD providers, as well as all the other partners, really want to wish you a successful Pathfinders. And we look forward to finding you tomorrow on time for class at 11:30 a.m. Eastern. Your PD providers will be waiting for you. And we look forward to a successful Pathfinders Winter Institute 2021. Thank you.